For nearly 2,000 years, the two largest ships of the ancient world lay deliberately sunk at the bottom of a quiet Italian lake. They weren't warships. They were floating palaces, and the reason they were scuttled is a story of madness and depravity Rome tried to erase from history. The year is 1929. Under the orders of dictator Benito Mussolini, a colossal Roman-era water channel groans back to life. For the first time in 2 millennia, the water level of Lake Nemi, the sacred mirror of Diana, begins to fall. Foot by foot, the dark water recedes, and something impossible emerges from the mud. First, the tip of a colossal timber beam, then another and another. It is a structure of impossible size, a ship larger than any historian believed the ancient world could build. As the pumps drone on for months, a second, even larger vessel appears beside it. But these are not warships. Divers surface with bronze animal heads, ivory carvings, and mosaic tiles of breathtaking beauty. They find lid pipes that carried hot and cold running water, and a marble floor that could be heated from below. These were not ships, they were floating villas, luxurious beyond imagination. And then, they find the other things. Altars for strange rituals, platforms seemingly designed for elaborate spectacles, and small, windowless rooms that spark unsettling questions. Why would the Emperor Caligula, a man remembered for madness and cruelty, build the two most opulent and technologically advanced structures of his time, only to let them sink in a tiny, volcanic lake? This is not just the story of two sunken ships. It is the story of Caligula's floating palaces of torture and depravity, and the dark secrets they were meant to take to the bottom of the lake forever. To understand why a Roman emperor would pour a fortune into building two floating palaces only to sink them, we have to understand the mind of the man who ordered them built. His name was Gaius, but history remembers him by his childhood nickname, Caligula. He takes the throne in 37 AD, and at first, Rome rejoices. The people love him. But this is a young man who grew up in a gilded cage of paranoia and death, watching the previous emperor, Tiberius, systematically murder his mother and brothers. Absolute power, mixed with this deep-seated trauma, begins to poison his mind. The world he inherits is a powder keg. The Roman Senate, made up of powerful men from ancient families, still clings to the illusion of the Republic. They see the emperor as a first among equals, a guardian of tradition. Caligula sees them as insects. He looks to the east, to Egypt, and sees true power, pharaohs who are not just rulers, but living gods. That is what he wants. Rome becomes a stage for his increasingly erratic and terrifying theatre of cruelty. One day, he showers the public with gold. The next he executes a senator because he dislikes his haircut. The city is gripped by a silent fear, where every citizen, from the lowest slave to the most powerful noble, knows their life depends on the whim of an unstable boy who believes he can command the tides. The stakes are absolute. For the Roman elite, it is a daily struggle for survival. Saying the wrong thing, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, can mean the end of your family line. For Caligula, the stakes are even higher, achieving true godhood on earth. This is a battle for the very soul of Rome. Will it remain a republic in name, or will it become a divine monarchy where the emperor's every sick fantasy becomes law? The fuse is lit when Caligula stops pretending. He openly declares himself a living god, Neos Helios, the new sun. But a god cannot live like a man. He needs a sanctuary, a divine realm separate from the mortal world, where his power is absolute and there are no witnesses, and for that, he turns to the sacred, secluded Lake of Nemi. The order is given to build the impossible. The project is an engineer's nightmare. Lake Nemi is a collapsed volcano, its shores steep and its location remote. Traditional Roman shipyards are miles away on the coast. Everything must be built from scratch on the shoreline. Teams of architects, engineers, and thousands of slaves descend upon the tranquil lake. They fell entire groves of pine, larch, and fir trees, shaping them into massive planks. Roman engineering, the pride of the world, is pushed to its absolute limit. They employ a technology so advanced it would not be seen again for 1,000 years, the Archimedes screw, used to bilge water from the massive hulls. Slowly, against all odds, the two Leviathans take shape. They are not built for speed or for war. They are built as floating foundations, stable and immense. And then, the decoration begins. The finest artisans in the empire are brought to Nemi. They lay down a series of intricate mosaics, depicting mythological scenes and geometric patterns. They carve statues from marble and cast fixtures from solid bronze. They install a complex plumbing system of lead pipes, stamped with Caligula's name, that provides hot and cold running water to baths and fountains, luxury unheard of on a vessel. One ship is a temple, dedicated to the goddess Diana, the patron of the lake. But the other, the larger of the two, is a palace dedicated to Caligula himself. It has bedrooms, dining halls, and sprawling colonnades. It is a testament to his power, a floating piece of Rome in his private sanctuary. For a brief moment, it seems like a triumph of vision. The spectacles begin as magnificent displays. Lavish banquets are held under silk canopies, with music drifting across the water. The emperor entertains guests with plays and poetry readings. It is the pinnacle of imperial luxury. But the glimmer of artistic grandeur quickly darkens into a shadow of dread. The wine-fueled parties become more and more unhinged. The poetry readings are replaced with gladiatorial contests to the death, where the losers are not carried away but simply heaved over the side into the dark water. Whispers begin to leak out from the lake, stories carried by terrified servants and trembling guests. Stories of Caligula forcing the wives and daughters of high-ranking senators to attend his parties, where he would disappear with them into the ship's small, windowless rooms. The floating palace of pleasure becomes a floating prison of shame. The beautiful art and groundbreaking technology become the backdrop for systematic humiliation and cruelty. The laughter heard across the water is no longer joyful, it is manic and terrifying. The point of no return comes on a moonless night. Caligula, in a fit of divine arrogance, summons a group of Rome's most powerful senators to the larger ship. They arrive, fearing the worst, and their fears are exceeded. He doesn't just host a party, he orchestrates a night of psychological torture. He forces the proud noblemen to serve him and his favorites, acting as common slaves. He delivers a rambling speech, declaring that he is a living god and that he is considering appointing his favorite horse, Incitatus, to the position of consul, the highest office in Rome. It is the ultimate insult, a declaration that his horse is worth more than all of them combined. He stages mock executions, having his guards drag a senator away, only for the man to be returned moments later, pale and shaking. The senators leave the ship at dawn, not just humiliated, but fundamentally broken. The glimmer of hope that the emperor could be managed is extinguished forever. They now know this is not a political negotiation, it is a fight for survival. In the secret meetings that follow, the whispers of dissent turn into a solid, cold, blooded conspiracy. They have no choice. The god must die. The descent begins on January 24th, 41 AD. The city of Rome is buzzing with the energy of the Palatine Games, the final day of the festival. Inside the imperial palace, the conspirators wait. Their leader is Cassius Chaerea, a senior officer of the Praetorian Guard, a man Caligula has personally and publicly mocked for years. Every taunt, every sneer, has hardened Chaerea's resolve into a diamond point of hatred. The plan is set. As Caligula leaves the theatre for his midday meal, they will corner him in a secluded palace corridor. The emperor is surrounded by his massive, loyal German bodyguard, but for a few moments in the narrow passage, he will be vulnerable. The air in the tunnel is cool and damp. Caligula walks ahead, chatting with a group of young actors. The moment arrives. Chaerea steps forward, his voice steady. He asks the emperor for the day's password. Caligula smirks and gives another insulting, effeminate reply. It is his last mistake. Chaerea draws his sword. The first blow strikes Caligula on the neck, a shocking, brutal impact. The emperor stumbles, crying out. There is no epic duel, no final speech. There is only a flurry of savage, desperate motion as the other conspirators surge forward, their blades rising and falling in the dim light. The sound is a wet, percussive chaos. The German guards, hearing the commotion, react too late. By the time they arrive, it is over. The self-proclaimed god, the new sun, lies lifeless on the stone floor. Panic explodes within the palace. But as the news spreads, one order rises above the chaos. The Senate, emboldened by the assassination, issues a decree of damnatio memoriae, condemnation of memory. Every statue of Caligula is to be torn down, his name chiseled off every monument. He is to be erased. And the most magnificent, most personal, and most depraved symbols of his reign are the two giant ships still floating serenely on Lake Nemi. The order is given. There is no ceremony. Roman soldiers row out to the floating palaces, their hammers and axes ready. They methodically punch holes through the massive hulls, letting the cold, dark water of the volcanic lake pour in. The mosaics, the marble floors, the bronze statues, and all the secrets of what happened in those rooms are sent to the bottom, to be buried in the mud forever. In the immediate aftermath of Caligula's assassination, the memory of his reign is brutally suppressed. His wife and daughter are murdered within hours. The Praetorian Guard, fearing the Senate will disband them, finds Caligula's uncle, the stammering and overlooked Claudius, hiding behind a curtain and declares him the new emperor. One of Claudius' first acts is to hunt down and execute Cassius Chaerea and the other assassins. Their bold strike to save the Republic did not restore it, it simply traded one emperor for another. The sinking of the Nemi ships is the final act of this erasure. For nearly 2 millennia, the two largest and most advanced ships of the ancient world are successfully wiped from history, becoming little more than a whisper, a local legend told by fishermen who sometimes pulled up strange artifacts in their nets. The act of sinking the ships had a paradoxical effect. While it erased them from the historical record, it also preserved them. Encased in the cold, oxygen, or mud at the bottom of the lake, the wooden hulls were protected from the decay that claimed nearly every other organic artifact from the Roman world. Caligula's story lived on as a caricature of madness, but the physical proof of his incredible ambition and the technology he commanded was perfectly frozen in time. The attempt to destroy his legacy ironically became the ultimate act of its preservation, creating a historical time capsule waiting for a moment of equal ambition to bring it back to the surface. The story doesn't end there. In the 1920s, another tyrant, Benito Mussolini, becomes obsessed with reviving the glory of the Roman Empire. He sees the recovery of the Nemi ships as a monumental propaganda victory, a way to physically link his fascist regime to the power of the Caesars. After the lake is drained and the ships are recovered, they are housed in a massive, state-of-the-art museum built right on the shoreline. But their rediscovery is short-lived. In 1944, as Allied forces pushed through Italy, retreating German soldiers set fire to the museum. The ancient timbers, preserved for 1900 years in the mud, burned to ash in a single night. The very act meant to erase Caligula's legacy, sinking his ships, ultimately preserved them, only for a modern dictator's obsession with that same legacy to lead to their final, irreversible destruction. The story of the Nemi ships is a haunting lesson in the cycles of power and destruction. An emperor tried to build a floating heaven on a sacred lake, only for his successors to sink it, hoping to drown the memory of his madness. A modern dictator, obsessed with that same emperor's power, raised the ships from the dead, only for the chaos of his own war to turn them to ash. All that remains today are the small things, the bronze wolf heads, the lead pipes, the scattered mosaic tiles, silent witnesses to a legacy of genius and depravity that refuses to be completely erased. It leaves a lingering question. What other impossible histories are still lying at the bottom of our quiet lakes, waiting for the water to recede? What is the most shocking part of this story to you? The incredible technology of the ships, the depravity of their purpose, or the fact that they were found only to be destroyed all over again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We believe the darkest chapters of history hold the most important lessons. If you agree, subscribe to Dark History and join us for the next story that was meant to be forgotten.